Hi, I'm Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V. If you're watching this video, it is probably because I have not yet edited my holiday video properly, and so I'm giving you this one as a little backup. Now, I have mentioned slipping through to you a few times. That is this book I collaborated on with Michael Wombat, K.R. Smith, and the lovely Miranda Kay, who came on my channel a couple of weeks ago to talk about her book, Kill the Goblins. Now, I'm really pleased with the stories that I contributed to this anthology. It was so much fun doing parallel universe stories, time travel stories, that sort of thing. And so I thought I would read one of them to you, one of my favourites from the book that I wrote especially for this book, as a little treat for you for after my holiday. So this story is called Ripples, and it is by me, Victoria Pearson. Chapter 1. I still hate this bit. Anya stared at the pool in front of her, its mercurial silver surface rippling in unfelt breezes. You'll get used to it, her mentor Frank said, busying himself with his chronometer. Anya didn't yet have her own chronometer. She was still in training. They looked expensive too, like huge brass pocket watch if the gears were visible in 5 dimensions. This might be a stupid question, she said. There was a loud click and a faint whirring from the chronometer. There are no stupid questions when it comes to time streams. Frank didn't look up from his tinkering. Well, I was just wondering, how old are you? Frank stared at her for a second, his expression unreadable. Okay, maybe there are some stupid questions. He returned his attention to the chronometer, turning the wheels on the side of its face, setting the 17 hands to the precise location in space-time they needed. It's just, you don't look much older than 45, but you've got really 1980s energy, you know? Well, good eye, I did spend about 40 years in the 1980s, but I was actually born in 2493. There had been a time, not that long ago really, when Anya would have questioned how Frank could possibly have spent 40 years in a single decade, but she knew better now. Time is like a Viennetta, according to Frank, all whirling and looped up against itself. Instead, she asked about the pools. Why can't you see into these ones, she said. They usually look like water. These aren't usual time streams. They're just closed loops. They're not connected to anything. They're a good place for field practice because you can't use any time ripples. Not that ones that matter, anyway. They're made for training? No, they just happen to be really good for trading in. They were created when we close a fractured timeline. I don't think I've done that module yet. Okay, have you looked at the Boudica problem? Anya nodded, but he seemed to want more. A time tourist warned Boudica about the bottleneck she was walking her troops into, so she went a different way and claimed a 4th victory. But that caused ramifications throughout history. For various reasons, it wasn't supposed to happen in that particular time stream, so we had to go back and prevent the tourist from warning her and allowing the massacre, but subsequently saving several 100,000 people from the resulting war. Good. So in that situation, what happens to the people in the now dead timeline? Well, I'm not... I thought they never existed. Why did you think that? Well, because once our man went and prevented the time tourist from blabbing, none of that could ever have happened. She trailed off, realising her mistake as she spoke. That's wrong, isn't it? Yes. Why? Because... She groped for an answer, wishing she had studied harder. Her face was growing hot. Because that would create a paradox. Because if it never happened, we didn't need to send our man to prevent it. Exactly. Well done. So, where that would create a paradox, Boudica can't both win and lose after all, not in the same dimension. We snip the time stream and close it into a loop. What, so the people in it just carry on? I mean, it can't create a true parallel dimension if it's sealed off, can it? No, it can't. So what does that mean? She really hoped this wouldn't be on the finals. She didn't seem to know the material at all. I'm not sure. Think, Anya, you do know this. She scowled. Come on, think it out. Okay, so they can't do anything they didn't already do before we close the loop, right? Because otherwise we would have a new time branch starting each time they made a new choice. Are you asking me or telling me? He chuckled at her panicked expression. You're correct, there's no need to sound so unsure. So, if they can't make a new choice, they repeat the same day forever, she guessed. Bingo, kid. Groundhog Day. Ground what? Never mind. Have you got your DNA sample? She held out a small glass tube and he took it. They don't always repeat a day. It depends on the amount of time it took us to close the loop. Could be a week, could be an hour, but yes, they repeat. Have you done your equipment check? Anya's hands went instinctively to each of her pockets in turn, checking she had a bulge in each, even though she'd checked it twice before she arrived and once while she'd been waiting in the corridor for Frank to arrive. Surely after a short time, the time stream suffers chronometastatic necrosis? He raised his eyebrows approvingly, which was about as expressive as Frank's approval usually got. You made that connection quick, well done. Yes, chronometastatic necrosis, leading to severe time decay until eventually the pocket universe itself breaks down. So what happens to the people? What happens to any of us when our time's up? You ready? No, but yeah. She took a huge breath. Trick is to fill your lungs gently and slowly exhale as you submerge. Stop fighting it. Frank stepped almost casually into the pool and slowly disappeared beneath the surface. After a moment's hesitation, Anya followed. The silver gloop closed over the top of Anya's head and returned to calmly rippling under the green sky, just like every other silver pool in the blue-green grass. Chapter 2. There was a moment of intense pain, like every molecule of Anya was being pressed, squeezed, rolled out and sprung back into shape again. For a second it was like her lungs were full of liquid fire, as there was suddenly no air in them and she panicked, choking. But then there was a blinding light and a crushing, overwhelming darkness, and she could breathe again. Light gradually dawned, allowing Anya's eyes to adjust slowly. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, with no discernible source. The space they were in was featureless, just darkness, no walls, floor or ceiling, just her and Frank. You are now under exam conditions, he said. When you step out of this space into the bubble, we will begin marking your performance. You'll be marked on both the speed and accuracy of completing the task itself and how well you follow company protocols while in the bubble. Although you are aware this is a bubble, not a time stream, you must behave as if you're in a standard time stream at all times. Is that clear? Yes. Anya fought the nausea rising in her stomach. There was no time for nerves. Okay, your task is to find the thing that doesn't belong in this world. You may take as long as you need. Once you find it, just say, Frank, I've completed the task, and I will pull you out. Understood? Could it be anywhere in the whole world? Theoretically, yes, but it'll be close, I promise. Are you ready? I am, she said, even though she really wasn't. Okay, then your examination will begin when you step out into the bubble. Frank gestured towards a growing crack of light nearby, forming a square in the air. She pushed on it, and it swung out like a door, revealing a glimpse of a cracked, dirty sink in a grotty public bathroom, and a hand dryer with a hand-lettered sign that said, out of order. The door was far too small to admit her, but she lifted her leg through the space anyway. It grew to accommodate her, spat her out, and shrank back down again with an audible pop. When she looked back at it, there was just a grimy mirror there. She took a deep, steadying breath and immediately wished that she hadn't, as her nostrils filled with the sickly scent of pine disinfectant and piss. She smoothed down her dark hair and tried to gather herself. Her reflection looked really pale. Where should she start? A toilet flushed in one of the cubicles behind her, and a purple-haired girl left it and came to the sink to wash her hands. She looked familiar, but Anya couldn't quite place her. The girl made eye contact in the mirror, and Anya looked away quickly, turning her attention to the sink and washing her hands. Excuse me, the purple-haired girl said, leaning across Anya to grab some paper towels from the stack on top of the hand dryer. Anya gasped and then tried to cover it with a cough. The woman was her. Slightly heavier maybe, younger definitely, with purple hair and contacts instead of glasses, but it was her. They'd been told about this in class, the possibility of running into a doppelganger. You, but not you. Your body, your parents, your home even, but not your experiences. It was a bit unsettling, and it was more than a bit worrying. What if other Anya recognised her? She hurriedly wiped her own hands on her jeans and rushed out of the toilets. She found herself in a cafe and recognised where she was. This was Danny's Diner on Princes Street. She wasn't far from home, or rather, what would be home in her own time stream. It felt like her own stream, right down to the crooked picture of eggs and bacon on the wall and the old man who sat at the end of the counter. Sup, Rick, she said unthinkingly as she passed. Do I know you, kid? Anya pretended not to hear and rushed out of the diner. Stupid, stupid, stupid! She'd obviously just lost marks already with that little slip. She should be more careful. The street looked normal enough. Light but steady stream of traffic, birdsong, a gaggle of kids playing in the park over the road. Nothing was obviously out of place. But of course the first thing to do would be to establish the date. She turned left and started heading towards the newsagent up on the corner. The signage above the door looked different. It was blue rather than red, and proclaimed it to be called Parkside News and Confectionery rather than the Martins it was in her world. But that wasn't necessarily the wrong thing. Every time a person makes a decision, it causes ripples in reality. Any number of small choices could have led to the change in name. It wasn't necessarily a sign of something amiss. She pulled her wallet out of her pocket and checked the contents. Her debit card was there, and even though she knew what it said, it was still impossible to read. Her eyes hated focusing on it, and staring at it too long made her feel sick. That meant it was working. She walked into the shop, instinctively turning right to find the papers, but found alcohol instead. She looked around, disoriented, and then found the newsstand on the other wall. It was like the whole shop had been flipped in a mirror. She grabbed the first paper she saw and took it to the counter. She held her breath while the card transaction played out, certain it would fail, but it went through without incident. She tucked the paper under her arm and walked briskly back towards the park. She could sit on the bench, check out the news stories, and do some observation. She settled on the first bench she came across in the park. It was a really beautiful day, with clear blue sky and the sound of birdsong. Blossom clung to the trees alongside autumn leaves, but that was a classic symptom of chronometastatic necrosis, so she didn't pay it any mind. A Gothic girl on the bench across the park caught her eye. She seemed really out of place, dressed all in black with dyed black hair and a face so white it had to be makeup. She had a crow perched on her knee and was feeding it strips of bacon from a packet. Definitely weird, but weird enough to be the thing she was looking for? Anya wasn't sure. Corvids are easy enough to tame if you feed them regularly, and while it was an odd thing to do, it wasn't completely out of the realms of possibility. She turned her attention to the paper. September 2nd, 2006. Her heart sank. It was today, and soon probably. Was this part of the test? If it was cruel. Would it even happen here? She had to know. Knowing she shouldn't, knowing it would hurt, she collected up her things and headed out of the park. Excuse me, she grabbed a passing dog walker. Do you have the time? It's just coming up to 5. Thanks. She started to run. Even as her feet pounded the pavement, she willed her legs to go faster. Even as her breath tore in her chest from exertion, she knew she shouldn't go. Nevertheless, she kept running. She arrived at her mum's office just as she was leaving. The other mother looked almost exactly like her mum from home, even down to the outfit choice. Anya remembered yelling at her that same morning, telling her she was too old to wear a pretty pink dress, and swallowed a big lump of shame in her throat. She had to stop Mum getting in the car. She ran across the street, paying no heed to the cars that swerved and screeched around her. Mrs. Ashfield, she called out. Mrs. Ashfield, wait! If she could just hold her back long enough. Other mother heard her and looked up, frowning slightly. Can I help? Mrs. Ashfield, please, Anya panted. You can't get in your car. You just have to get the bus home today. Other mother's expression changed from one of curiosity to one of slight annoyance. I know it's a big car, but I do offset, she said, getting into the car. Did she think Anya was a climate protester? No, please, it isn't safe. Leave me alone. Other mother slammed her door and started rolling out of her parking spot. Please, Mum, at least go home a different way. Whether other mother heard Anya or not wasn't clear, but she didn't stop. Anya watched helpless as she drove away. She stood frozen, stuck in the scent of her mum's perfume. Moments later, she heard the screeching of rubber on road, metal on metal, the distant screams of people who saw. She sank to her knees, not even able to scream, just letting out a low, slow moan. She sat in the parking space as the ambulances and fire engines screamed past to the scene. She sat long after the noise had died away. She sat as the day slowly turned to night and even more slowly crept towards morning. Just before dawn, there was a high-pitched squeal. The sky shuddered, jolted, and turned briefly green. There was a huge pop, and Anya found herself once again staring at her own reflection in the dirty mirror of Danny's diner bathroom. The toilet in the cubicle behind her flushed, and other Anya stepped out to wash her hands. The timeline had begun anew. Chapter 3. She shouldn't see other mother again. She knew that. But she'd probably failed the exam now anyway, so what did it matter? She left the diner before other Anya could even ask for a paper towel and sprinted to her other mother's office. If she could just delay her by leaving a little bit, then the bus would have already passed the junction and wouldn't hit her car. "I need to see Mrs. Ashfield," she told the receptionist. "Sure, let me just see when she's available." The receptionist started tapping at the computer. "No, I need to see her now." "I'm afraid Mrs. Ashfield sees clients by appointment only." "Oh, I have an appointment. It's for 4:45. "Oh," the receptionist looked confused. "I don't see it in the system." "I spoke with Shirley," Anya said. Please let Shirley work here in this reality. The receptionist tutted. "Well, she hasn't put it in the system. What's your name?" Anna. My name's Anna," she panicked. "Anna Deskington." "Deskington? Great job, Anya. Well done." "Take a seat a moment," the receptionist said, and picked up her phone. "Mrs. Ashfield, there's a young lady here claiming she has an appointment." "Yes. No, I know. She said Shirley booked it in." Okay, will do." She hung up and addressed Anya directly. "I'm so sorry, Miss Deskington, was it? Mrs. Ashfield is unavailable right now. The appointment must have been booked in error. I'm terribly sorry to have inconvenienced you. Can I reschedule?" "Oh, it really won't take a moment." "I'm sorry, ma'am. Mrs. Ashfield is about to leave to go to her son's school play. She really can't see you." Anya took a deep breath, trying to think through her options as quickly as she could. She thanked the receptionist and headed out. She could wait and talk to the other mother at the door. She only needed to delay her by a few minutes. She went and sat on the concrete steps outside the building, waiting. A few minutes later, a security guard approached her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I'm just waiting for someone, thanks," she said. "I'm going to have to ask you to wait off the property, please, ma'am." "But we aren't insured to let you sit here." He took her arm, gently but firmly, and pulled her to her feet. She glanced over her shoulder and saw the receptionist smirking through the window at her as she walked Anya off to the car park and down the street. She was at a loss. What could she do? Delay the bus? How? She wouldn't get back to it on time. Her mum's car pulled out of the car park. She made a split-second decision and leapt in front of it. Other mothers stamped on her brakes, but it was too late. She smacked into Anya with a sickening crunch, sending her flying up over the bonnet. "Oh my God!" Anya's mum leapt out of the car. "Are you okay? I'm so sorry." "It's okay. I'll be okay," Anya wheezed. In truth, she could already tell she'd broken her wrist, and probably a few ribs to boot, but that would undoubtedly reset when the timeline did. Well, hopefully. "We should get you to the hospital, get you checked out." Anya started to object, but it all melted away when other mothers started helping her up. How many years had it been since Mum touched her last? She couldn't tell anymore. Since joining the academy, that sort of detail became somewhat obsolete. It would probably be fine to get in the car now, though. The bus would have moved on, surely. She let the other mother help her into the car, clucking and fussing over her like a mother hen. It was so soothing to be looked after for a change. "I can't believe I didn't even see you," she kept saying. "Are you sure you're okay?" They turned off the high street and onto Prince's Street, whipping past the park and diner, turning onto Parkside Road. "Are you bleeding?" Other mother leant across to touch Anya's head. That second was enough. The bus came out of nowhere, screeching into them with a crunch that sounded too loud to be real. Anya's nose filled with the stench of smoke, diesel, and burning hair. There was pain, and there was darkness. Chapter 4. Anya panted at the cracked sink in Danny's, covered in a thin sheen of sweat. The toilet flushed behind her, and other Anya came out of the cubicle to wash her hands. Anya deliberately knocked other Anya's handbag off the edge of the sink, scattering the contents all over the filthy floor. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, making a huge show of helping other Anya gather her things while actually pocketing her keys. Mum's spare was always on there, so they'd have it handy if her key ever got lost. Anya ran through the diner, not caring how much attention she drew, and sprinted to other mothers' work, heading straight to the security guard. "Excuse me, mate," she called. "I think a bloke down there's trying to break into the cars." She gestured to the overflow car park at the side of the building. He nodded appreciatively and jogged in that direction. She didn't have long. She hurried to other mother's car and hopped in. She didn't have to take it far, just far enough. She drove carefully to the big Tesco and parked it there. Then she returned to the park on foot. The Crow girl was there, feeding her bird his bacon. Anya sat on the other bench and watched the road. If it had worked, Mum should be heading to the bus stop any time now. or waiting for a taxi. Either way, she'd be safe. A little after 5, she spotted other mother walking down the street. Irritated, yes, but alive. She was on the phone, presumably trying to report her car as stolen, heading towards the bus stop. She was safe. Anya felt sick with relief. "Anya!" other mother called out, but she was talking to other Anya, who was just stepping out of Danny's across the street. Other mother stepped into the road and was hit by the passing number 37 bus. Anya watched numb as her other self desperately tried to resuscitate Mum in vain. She waited until the ambulances had been and gone, and the police had breathalyzed the bus driver and taken her other hysterical self home. All that was left of Mum was a red smudge and some broken glass in the gutter. Then she got up, walked to the nearest pub, and sat at the bar. "Vodka," she said to the barman, handing over her card. "Just keep it coming, much as you can." She drank there until they closed, and then she found a petrol station, bought a huge bottle of cider, went to the park and drank some more. She couldn't cry, couldn't feel anything at all. She waited for the sky to turn green and jolt, but she passed out before it did. Chapter 5. Anya threw up into the cracked sink at Danny's. The toilet flushed behind her and other Anya came out to wash her hands. "Are you okay?" she asked. Was she okay? Far from it, but she thought she understood now. "I'm good." She switched on the taps, washing the vomit away. "Are you sure? Shall I get you some water?" "No, I'm good." Anya left the diner and headed to Other Mother's office for what she knew would be the last time. She hung around until Other Mother was leaving. "Excuse me?" "Yes," Other Mother smiled, her face lighting up. Why had Anya never appreciated how pretty her mum was when she'd had the chance? "I just wanted to tell you your dress is beautiful," Anya said. "You look really lovely." "Oh." Other Mother's hand went to her hair and she blushed. "Thank you so much." Anya smiled and walked away. She headed back to the park, sat on the bench opposite the Crow Girl. She didn't turn to look at the road when she heard the crash. "Frank, I've completed the task." Frank ambled up and sat next to her on the bench. "How you doing, kiddo?" He said it quietly, as if he knew exactly how she was. "Been better, but I know the answer." "Yeah? What shouldn't be here?" "It's me, isn't it? I shouldn't be here." He smiled sadly and nodded. "That was a cruel lesson," she said. "The important lessons often are. And the fact that we aren't supposed to be here, that we're always just visitors, that isn't your mother, even though it looks like her, well, that's the most important lesson of them all. I shouldn't have tried to intervene. Did I fail? No. You got there quicker than some do, believe me. Only 3 loops, that's a high pass. Can't believe you didn't fall for the old shop trick, or the goth chick over there." They sat in the September sunshine in silence for a while, watching blossoms and autumn leaves falling together. "I'm never going to get her back, am I?" Anya said eventually, not looking at Frank. "I'll never be able to save her." "No, you won't. In your reality, she is dead. That will always have happened to you. You can't change it. I'm sorry." Anya shrugged a shoulder, saying nothing. "Is that why you joined the academy?" Frank asked. "Maybe. I don't know." It was. He knew it was. She knew it was. Was there even a reason to continue training? Did she even want this job, really? "Lots of us join for similar reasons, you know. Ain't no shame in it. You cottoned on quick. You'll be a good officer." He waited a while and added, "This one takes us all this way, I promise. It ain't just you." "Can we go home now?" "Sure thing, kiddo." Frank pressed a button on the side of his chronometer. The air rippled, and Anya and Frank dissolved like smoke. The Crow Girl was confused for a second, but almost instantly forgot why, and then returned to feeding her crows strips of raw bacon as the evening turned to twilight. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that story and that it's not too bad having a filler vlog from me. Again, that story was in Slipping Through, which I have spoken to you about before, but you can find that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the other good online bookshops, and I would strongly recommend. There's some brilliant stories from some other authors in there as well. If this has gone out on the 20th, then next week I will be showing you my holiday video. Really, really excited about that. But if this is actually the week after and you've already seen my holiday video, then I have no idea what I'm vlogging about next, so join me for another chaos vlog. Either way, I will be here 6 AM UK time on Monday, doing something with you. And if you can't wait till then, I understand, I'm pretty awesome. I will also be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath and letting you know what I'm grateful for. I'll be checking in with Dave the Terrarium on Tuesday if I remember to, and I'll be here for a Witchy Wednesday as well, so you can see lots and lots of me this week. Until then, you have yourself a magical week.